Thank you all for logging in to our online Green Bay Power BI user group, Titletown USA. Anyone not from Wisconsin should know that Titletown USA means like Green Bay, eh? And I'm going to show our agenda right away. It's full. We've got 5 separate speakers, plus all the usual news and events and features and so forth. So I want to just mention everybody: Drew Pogaman of Heartland Business Systems in Little Chute, Eric Highland of US Venture in Appleton, Kelly Mrashensky. And Kelly, you pipe up and tell me if I'm mispronouncing your name. I said Mrashensky.
I say Mrozinski, but I don't know.
Mrozinski.
I think it's just you pick away and that's how you say it.
So accent on the first syllable, Mrozhensky. All right. Maybe without the sh. Moi, Steve Urbach, and our featured speaker is Chris Wagner, returning to the Green Bay Power BI user group. All right.
Yay!
Recognize these guys? Dumb and Dumber. All right, first, Power BI user group news and updates. There's been a fair amount, but I'm going to try to condense it as much as I can. You may or may not know that the Power BI user group falls under a larger organizational umbrella called Dynamic Communities. And coming up next month, beginning on October 6th or 7th, I believe, is the North America User Group Summit. 6 weeks before the summit starts, they fire the existing CEO and hire a new one. So I've got a link there to the full text of the announcement for the new CEO, but it has caused a bit of upheaval in the presentation space, because here comes this big event next month and we got a new leader right away. So we'll see what shakes out. I have had a long conversation with Mr. Seifert, John Seifert. At the time, he'd only been on the job for 12 days. I like the guy. It's a heck of a thing to change the executive, 5 or 6 weeks out from their biggest event of the year, but he got to work right away. He promised to make the website different and better. Paul, who is our biggest critic.
Chief complainer.
Yes, chief complainer of how the website works, and I can't blame him. But I've seen what they've been working on, and okay, so far it looks good. So this is very recent news. The next thing to look at is they've changed the way that the community summit is organized. Yet again, there's no on-site meeting, all virtual, and they've changed the way that one can sign up for it. You can sign up for free, which gets you to see all of the expo hall exhibits, all of the sponsors for the event. And there's also a handful of actually not a handful, it's a fairly large deal. There are things called partner solution showcases. So the vendors that have signed up for this capability, they are showing their wares, and there's a schedule of those showcases during the summit. The next level for $3.99 is a Community Plus Pass that adds on 40 spotlight sessions. Now, unfortunately, they're not all, say, Power Platform. They're not all a particular interest that you want to see. The 40 spotlight sessions cross over all 8 different solution tracks that are being presented at the Community Summit. And there's also 2 Microsoft Community Engagement Forums. I have no idea what those are. The details are at the site. The link to it is at the bottom here. We'll have the PowerPoint slide deck available on the Green Bay community site at the Power BI user group so that you can click on the links. The Community All Access Pass, I got that for myself because I've been involved with Summit for, this will be my 7th, I think. That includes access to all the educational sessions that are being presented, and it's 400 plus. So there's Power BI, and there's other Power Platform, and then there's the accounting tracks for each of the Microsoft accounting products. And after the summit is over with, you get access to all the recordings because they're recording every single one of the educational sessions. So that would be like a overabundance of stuff, but that is what they're offering. That is what they've set up now. Okay. Are you confused? You can. I put this slide in here for the kind of a semi promotion for other user groups around the world. If you go to this site, pbiusergroup.com, participate user groups, there is a map which shows all the locations of the user groups around the world, and you can find out like what user group meetings are coming up very soon, and it's all free, so you can go and see what other user groups are doing, and that's the one big advantage of doing this all virtually. Okay. Our next meeting, this is self-explanatory, November 17th, and our featured speaker is Belinda Allen, who is one of the only, if not the only, dual Microsoft MVP. She presented for us back last summer in August at Nature's Way Products, as it turns out, where Kelly and her cohort Wallow were hosts for that meeting back in August last year. She'll present on data modeling on November 17th. 17th? That's not right. I'm sorry, that should be the 19th. Let's see, I'm going to do this and put in 19, not 17. Okay? I'll change the slide before I post it. Sorry about that. All right, we're going to get into Power BI new features. As usual, I post the updates. These are the YouTube videos presented by Microsoft personnel that describe all the new features in each of the updates. Shows the length of them there, 24 and 25 minutes. I noted that the September update, they're now combining all of the different product updates for Power BI into one update. You can see on the title slides there, the one on the left for August says Power BI Desktop. This one says Power BI. So Desktop Service and Mobile Power BI are in one feature summary. And I'm going to focus on one of the features that appeared in the August 2020 update. But first, I like this gal, Ruth Pozuelo Martinez. She has her own series of videos where she goes over, not only goes over the features that are coming in the new releases, but she also has a lot of tips and tricks and so forth on her channel. I thought the first one there for August was interesting because there's very little in the way of background or screenshots. She just waves her hands a lot. But you know, give her a look. There's the link for each of those. They are live. She's very charming and knowledgeable. That's us. Okay. In addition, these guys, they're all Microsoft Power BI MVPs. They do a video every month whenever there's a new release. And it is organized by the guy in the lower right-hand corner. whose name is Mike Carlo. He's an MVP and he's also the leader of the Milwaukee Power BI user group. And I know him personally. The guy in the middle of the bottom row is Reed Havens. I know who that is. The other three guys are from outside the country, and I heard their first names during this presentation, but I don't know who they are. But they're all MVPs, and they're talking about the August desktop update. They're all laughing right now because this is the point in the video where Reed Havens mounted on his backdrop there that caricature, which is himself. So it was this kind of funny ego thing that everybody was laughing at. Okay, new custom visuals, a little bit of a change here too. I had been showing you over the last several months this Power BI file, which I had purchased from DataChant. The name of the guy who made it is Gil Raviv. He posted an article just 3 days ago saying that his PBIX file no longer works because the method for getting access to this data on the AppSource site changed, and so he decided to make it a Power BI app instead of a PBIX file. So here I'm showing it to you in the website window. So we're in the custom visuals area on the Power BI site. This is the custom visuals exploration tool. It looks the same, it works the same, but there's one odd thing. Last month, this number right here was 270 for the total number of visuals. Now it's 239, but I went to the AppSource site itself and it showed 286. So I'm not sure what the story is here. There's also one little point to note on this app is right down here you see where it says you can click on that link to get the PBIX file. Well, that goes to the old file, which has not been updated, which probably won't work. And you get to pay $25 for the privilege. So don't do that. Just whatever reason, he didn't update the visuals on this thing. It works the same. You can click on the link right there, and you can download, or it'll go to the page on the AppSource, and you can download the PBIX file. And some of them have video links, so you see how it works. This is actually quite a handy tool. All right. Master of Power BI, you are.
Very nice impression. Well done.
Only a devoted Star Wars fan. I saw the original.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
Make it so. Come on, buddy.
Star Wars. I saw the original Star Wars movie in 1977 8 times in the theaters. I was really into it. Okay, we're going to get going with our speakers. Our first presenter has an ambitious agenda for this segment. I'll let him go into the details, so please welcome Drew Pogeman.
Yay!
Yay, Drew. Okay.
Cheer for myself. Hey. So, all right. I'm going to do a really quick PowerPoint because I can't do anything without PowerPoint. So let me just go through this first, just to kind of give you guys an overview of what I'm going to do here. So are you guys seeing a bunch of plants? Okay. So what I want to walk through is a Center of Excellence starter kit that Microsoft has provided out there for download and installation. And it really is something that was interesting to me because we actually had some customers that are starting to really build Power Apps and flows and having a number of different makers out there building them and really kind of getting into that world of, okay, who's controlling this? Who's understanding our app catalog? What compliance do we need in place to be able to manage this? So So I'm going to walk through like a 50,000 foot, what is it, some high level components, and then demo. Okay, really kind of on a couple of the Power Apps that they have, a model and a Canvas app, and then going through a Power BI dashboard that is packaged up with this as well. But if you have questions, yell out as I go through it. I'll watch my time, but just yell if I'm taking too much. How's that, Steve?
That sounds good. We'll let you know, Drew.
Awesome. So from the Center of Excellence perspective, it really covers a number of different things. And I'm only going to touch on a few of these today just because of time. But administration of your applications, your flows, gathering additional metadata, governance about these as far as, hey, what does a developer or a maker need to fill out? So we're going to publish that in an app catalog if we got the right types of information. Who's using it? What connections do they use, et cetera. Some nurture capabilities to really kind of register for app in a day sessions and those type of things to get individuals in your organization to really learn the technology and really kind of start adopting it. And then finally, operations and support from a long-term perspective. The overall key is to continue to drive innovation, which you always want to do with a Power Platform, but really kind of remove silos, show individuals what's out there and have some governance around what you're doing there. Why? It has a lot of out-of-the-box features and a little admin portal that you can use, and it's got some robust ways to complete tasks. You can use, as an example, they have a DLP, a data loss prevention editor that can actually say, hey, if you turned on this DLP policy, what applications will that affect? Well, that's a pretty powerful little tool there to say, hey, this is going to affect these 3 different applications with that policy being changed. And then you can contact those individuals. And then it provides some templates and some customization starting points to get organizations going as well. These are the different pieces of it. Again, you can go to the COE starter kit, and I'll get this deck, Steve, to you, but you can go to the starter kit and download it and look at all the different pieces. Again, we'll touch a couple of these, but it really covers a number of different areas here. Why look at this? I mean, this is just an example from Chevron. I mean, a few years ago, they had really nothing going on. They were just starting to play with it. You had one person touching Power Apps, spelled with one word. Now it's 2, but, you know, touching Power Apps, and then they had a few people on it, then 12, then 20. Now it's got 5,000 plus users and 200 plus apps in their organization. So if you don't have governance and it starts exploding, it's going to be a challenge. Demo. Okay. Told you that wasn't too long of a deck. So, all right. Okay. I'm going to log into a demo tenant here where I installed this Center of Excellence. And in here, I'm going to touch on a few things. So first of all, within here, you're going to go into the new logo for Power Apps. And when you go into Power Apps, you have a number of different applications that are available to you. Okay. And of course, you can have direct links to these and those type of things. I'm going to start by just showing you really quick an admin application. And what this is actually doing is this admin application, there's a number of different Power Automate flows that are running, and right now they're scheduled daily, that'll go out and look for new apps that have been built. Look for new flows, new connectors, custom connectors that someone might have built, and pull that information into this admin side from a management perspective. So you think of that common data service or DataFlex Pro as being that location where you can continue to augment and build upon this information. I'll give you a really quick example. I'm going to look at the applications that exist. And this is one that we use in the app in a day session. And it's just a little device ordering app. This is what it looks like, where you can select a few different components, you can compare them. After you compare them, you can enter a justification, submit it, and then the back-end procurement team can say, okay, now I'll approve this and those type of things. So this is just a simple model app as an example. But what I can do here on this is I can look at this application, and I might be the governance committee on the back end going, well, has the developer documented what they need to document on this application so we can move it through our governance life cycle? Well, right now they haven't. Okay. So what they actually provide is another little model app here from a developer compliance center perspective, where I can go out here and look at my model apps, my Canvas apps. I haven't figured out all the color scheme here. I just know that green is good. I haven't figured out the blacks, and because this one is black as an example, so no idea. But I can go into this application as a developer and I can see, hey, when was it created, modified, some additional information. Great. I'm going to put some information in here. Drew only, whatever, a lot. Okay, so put in some, obviously this is being important for whatever you need to capture for your organization. But so I can enter all this information on the device ordering app as a developer and save that. So I got a simple little application to do that. And then when I go back into my admin application, if I refresh this page, and hopefully it works, it's a demo, it never does. So, but I go back into here, yes, and now the information that I need on the application is there. And it's still all in, like you can see, I actually filled that out in that Canvas app, but it was really filling all the information into the Common Data Service. So all of this data is being captured, and then the admin can do a review of this. But I could go here and say, okay, I'm gonna go to the next step in the business process flow. It's really a minor from a risk perspective, and then go into where do I want to put this? I'm going to put it in my application category in the collaboration side of it. I'll publish it in the app catalog, and I'll actually make it a featured application. So if I close that, now I can go into my app catalog, which I don't know if I have open, but let me show you real quick. So I'll go into the app catalog, which could think of this as, hey, it's a published set of different applications that people might want to look and utilize. I can request access to it. I could launch that application, but now I've published it in here under the device ordering app as well. So a little bit of a little catalog to work with within your organization. Real quick, let me go back and show you a couple other things, and then the Power BI dashboard, and we'll be good to go. So so this is in the back end from the management side. If I go back to that front end developer compliance perspective here, I can also go in, let me go back to my dashboard, and my device ordering app here, and I can go and look at the app settings around this. Now, from a Power BI perspective, you guys all know this. Power BI is embedded everywhere across Microsoft, right? I can go and look at this, and here's some information on the application. I can look at the versions of that application, when it was published, the flows that are connected to it, if there were any, what connectors it has, but also now there's an analytics preview. And you'll see that this is actually a Power BI dashboard embedded into the Power Apps administration environment, where I can look at the app and how many times per day is it launched, what types of platforms, what version, was it in the US, a different country. I can go in and look at maybe the performance of my application. If I wrote it, it's going to be slow, but others might be fast. So you can kind of look at how well is this application performing, when, how long were people running the application, etc. So nice little features here. You can actually get into some turning on monitoring of the application and kind of monitor what's happening as you're actually performing different operations in it as well. So they're really trying to add more and more governance and monitoring and those type of capabilities behind the scenes. Now, back to Steve had shown an app, right? From an app perspective, this is one of the Power BI apps that they have, actually the only one with this compliance center. And again, it provides that high level view of what does your environment look like within your organization. So I can click here and look at my overview of my Power Apps. If I had a more exciting than a test environment where everybody's mod administrator does everything, you'd obviously see a lot more app makers and see by environment who's got the most applications published, how often the users are utilizing those applications, what's my creation trend, in both development and production environments, how often, et cetera. So this really kind of gives you that holistic view of everything from your environments to the application side of it, and understanding who the makers of the applications are, how many sessions, users that are shared applications. You can see it kind of trending up, creating 10 Canvas apps in September with a couple of model-driven apps. Most of those were created a couple months ago when I created that instance. All the way through to, again, flows, custom connectors, makers, and connections. So what's nice is this is going to provide you a starter from a Power BI dashboard perspective. You can take this and build upon it and add your own additional information, add some additional flows that you may want to bring across. But then back in the management side of it, with this application, I can go in here and look at, as an example, go back to my apps here, and I can go in and look at the Sales Hub. And I can go and look at, well, that's not a very exciting one. Let's go back to my Developer Compliance Center. That has something here. So I can look at this application, and all of this information is pulled in from me through the flows, of course. But then I can also look at, what is this thing connecting to? And I can go back and look at the connectors. If I go into my connector side, like Office 365 Outlook, I can go in, because again, with the Common Data Service, this is all kind of related. I can go and look at, oh, this one doesn't show it, but I can go and look at, from a connectors view, they just don't have it set up. From a connector view, what applications are using that connector? So you can kind of go backwards to see the impacts if you're going to touch a specific connector in your environment. Who are the applications shared with? Again, back to your audit information. If you had notes or other related entities, everything from user roles that are allowed to use the application, etc. So I know I went through that really fast, Steve. I'm going off of the time I had here. Does anybody have any questions on kind of what this, any questions about what they saw?
Either take a moment to try and unmute, see if we get too many people doing that, or type it into the chat and we'll make sure to get it asked. Here's a moment to unmute and ask or type.
You can raise your hand too. There's that little hand symbol up at the top of your window.
And anybody wants to know, this took about, to configure all the flows, install the solutions, get everything up and running, at least that's what I have up and running. It took about 4 to 5 hours to get it up and running. So it wasn't too bad.
All right. I have a hand raised from Chris Wagner.
All right, so that was actually my question. Can you talk about what that experience was like? Did you have the proper documentation ahead of it? Did you have to have any special knowledge of Power Apps or Power Automate? And what level of security did you need to have in order to install this?
Well, I took advantage of being in a system admin role in an environment that's a demo environment. So I didn't really dig deep into if I needed a global admin or even just a Power Apps admin type of capability. So I don't know the answer to the security side of it, but from a installation steps perspective, it worked perfect. The only thing I had a problem with during the installation process was a couple of the flows. They were actually, I think they're Power Automate management flows, or the connector for those wouldn't activate. And I actually had to kind of do a trick behind the scenes and go and build my own flow and assign a connection to that. And once I got that connection to work, I went back and continued the step on this install, and it worked perfectly after that. So that piece was a little bit rocky. Took me a good 15 minutes to get through that. But other than that, the steps are pretty straightforward. It does not require any, expertise, but familiarity with environment and really kind of how to navigate Power Apps and how to navigate Flow or Power Automate is useful.
Thanks.
Yep. And you actually have to go into, some settings as far as Azure Active Directory and stuff like that, but it's very, very detailed. So
Thanks. No other questions yet in the chat. Here's your chance to raise your hand, type, or unmute quick. Going once. Going twice. Okay.
All right. Drew, thank you very, very much. Again, all of this is being recorded, and we'll We'll post the video after I've edited it a bit. Is that? Oh, that's Captain Picard behind Drew. Look
That's
at
why
that.
they make it so.
Look
Yeah.
at that. Oh yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and we should be right here. All right. And then we move on. Our next presenter is Eric Hyland. He's been a regular at our meetings, and US Venture has hosted meetings of the Fox Valley Business Intelligence and Analytics Meetup. And now his turn at the podium. Please welcome Eric Hyland.
All right.
Yay!
Hey, thanks. That's just awesome. Okay, I'm going to talk just briefly about incremental refresh in Power BI, what it is, why it is, how you can set it up, how you can make sure it's working. Just give you a real high-level view of it, and that shouldn't take too long. I have a little bit of a demo. I'm not going to build anything, but I'll show you the steps that I set up, and I'll publish it, and we'll see it working, hopefully. First of all, what is it? It's a way that you can set up your refreshes. So if you're doing import reports in Power BI versus not the direct query stuff, but if you're doing imported reports in Power BI, as you know, you publish it out to the service, you go out and you set up your refresh schedule, and every, whatever time you say it needs to refresh, it goes and it does its magic, connects to its data source and pulls the data. That's great. It's a wonderful thing. But where it can become problematic is if you have large tables you're pulling data from during the refresh. And if you're working with a Kimball architected warehouse with DIMS and facts, large fact tables, your fact sales, fact purchase orders, those kind of things. If you refresh those every single day and it's pulling millions of rows, that can take a while. And if a lot of the rows within that table don't really get updated, so say that you can only really update a sales order with your business process, in 15 days, and after that is kind of locked and never changes, then you're really pulling a lot of data needlessly when you do a full refresh like that. So what incremental load allows you to do is, as this chart kind of illustrates, it lets you be selective in what you pull out of that fact table. So if the orange line here is your complete fact table with sales records back to 2017, and for your purpose, for your Power BI report, you really don't care about anything but 2019 and forward, that's great. And you could do that today in the Power Query Editor. You could go in and say, okay, I just want to filter my data based off the order date to 2019 and forward. And that's already limiting some of the data. But what incremental refresh gets you is the ability to get more granular and then say, every single day that I do refresh, in this particular case, only look back a month. Okay? So you can imagine, if 2019 to today, September 24th, is 2 million rows. If you had that refreshing every single day, that's 2 million rows that, get pulled, and very likely none of these rows are going to change except the most recent ones. So if you could configure Power BI to only pull the last month during those refreshes and leave all this data that you've previously pulled up in the model out in the Power BI service, then that's going to speed up your refreshes a lot. And that's essentially what Power BI's incremental refresh does. It's been around in Premium a while. We at US Venture aren't on Premium. We've got a lot of reports published. We've got a lot of people hitting sales tables.
Is Premium required?
No, and that's kind of the beauty of it. It's now available in Pro. It's been like a month, I think, since it was released in Pro, so now it's pretty much available to all of us. And that's the thing. We have at US Venture a lot of reports, as I said, a lot of people hitting sales tables, a lot of records being pulled, kind of needlessly. They need to be in the model, but they don't change. The historic records don't, so why pull them? So we are going through an effort in places to implement incremental refresh. I'll show you how to set that up.
Did you have any comment you have any comment on the sourcing? Like, can it handle all sources?
Yeah, I mean, there's some caveats there, right? I mean, it, y the technical thing is it needs to support query folding within Power Query. Okay, and I'll show you kind of what that means. But in for our purposes, it basically works for databases. So if you're writing SQL or if SQL's being generated through the connector that you're using within Power BI, then that's likely going to support query folding and it's going to work. I can't speak to whether it's going to work with, extractions from SharePoint lists and those other things.
Sure.
Probably somebody else on this call can, but in our environment, it's pretty much a data warehouse back in SQL Server.
You might get into this with your demo, but a question was in the chat, does it have who columns with last update date? So I think what the question's asking is the idea that it's incremental refresh based on date, but also on who?
Yep, last updated. Yeah, so it does have that. I'll show you that. There's kind of two levels of it. The kind of sledgehammer approach, say, I want to pull the last 2 years, but I only really want to pull every day, the last month or the last quarter. But there is a facility in there where it's check a box and it'll say, I also within that range, in this particular case, in this illustration, the last month, only pull things that have a last updated date that's been updated since the last time it ran. So it's pretty cool. So that's the what and the why. How do you set it up? I'll show you this in a Power BI report that I have set up. Again, I'm no expert. This isn't rocket science. There's tons of YouTube videos on this stuff. You find it, and they're all pretty short, so it's real easy to set up. But at the highest level, these are the steps. You're going to go into Power BI. You're going to do your get data. You're going to point it at a database. You're going to go into the Power Query Editor, where that pops up. You're going to set up a couple parameters. They have to be called range start and range end. It's case sensitive, so you've got to get that right. But again, the documentation's out there. So you set up a couple parameters, then you filter a particular row in your table, in this case order date, based off those parameters. And I'll show you how that lays out in Power Query. So you set up a filter expression, and then you close and apply. It refreshes the data locally in Power BI Desktop. Then over in the field, as you right-click on the table, and you say, for this table, I do want to enable incremental refresh. And it asks you a couple questions. How far back do you need to go as a whole? In my case, 2 years or a year. And how much do you want to do every night? In my case, the last month. So that's kind of this setting here. This is kind of the new feature that is incremental refresh. Everything else up here has been in Power BI a long, long time. Once you set that up, you publish it up to the service and you schedule your refresh, and I can show you how you can kind of monitor if it works. So how do you know if it's working? Well, if you have a very large fact table and you went and set this up, you'd probably be able to tell pretty quickly after you do a refresh that the times are much less. But I've seen it also where you're doing a very large model and the portion of the reload that is the sales table is not that much as a whole for the entire refresh time, and you might not know exactly or feel confident that it's working. If you have a tool that can trace the SQL that's actually hitting the database, you can run that tool. So if you're a Microsoft shop, that's going to be SQL Profiler. So you can and test. You can set up Profiler. Now, you do have to have trace permissions on the database. You can fight your DBAs about that, but you can set up trace permissions, connect to your database, then go out to the Power BI service after you've published the report and hit refresh now and see what it generates. And what you'll see is, in this particular case, I'm going against an internet sales table in AdventureWorks, and you can see it'll pop out these criteria, and you'll see that it's going after order date, and you'll see the dates that it's using. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second, and we can see that it's really working. Here's some examples of it. The very first time you refresh the database, it's got to pull the full range of data that you specified. So if I say a year, it's going to pull a year. And if you trace it, you're going to see queries pop out, and I don't know the rhyme or reason behind exactly what some of these other where clauses are, but you'll see one, this one's 2019 to January 2020, and then it's got to go get everything in 2020. And for some reason in this case, it split it up into 5 additional queries. I'm sure we can find out why. Someone might be able to answer that on the call, or we could figure that out. But that's the first refresh where it's got to fill that whole set of data. The subsequent refreshes, in this case, I set it up to only pull the last month or whatever. You'll be able to see it generates just 1 or 2 queries and specifies in this case it had to go back to the beginning of August, and then it got the full month of September. Okay, so that sort of stuff you'll see in the profiler.
That's the query folding in action, someone said in the chat.
Yep.
The fact that it broke it up into 5.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. If you have premium, then you can actually use Management Studio, I believe, to connect to the analysis services instance for the model, and you can actually view the partitions that get generated. But if you're on Pro using this like we are, it's kind of a mystery as to sometimes how that works. Here's the things to know.
Before you get to your caveats, there was one question that might come before that. Like, if you wanted to full refresh easily?
If you're on Pro, I think you would be forced with doing some magic by changing the incremental refresh parameters and republishing it and triggering it that way. If you're on Premium, like I said, I think you can connect using Management Studio and actually go in and do some other things with that.
Thanks.
So the biggest things to be aware of are, number one, once you publish this report and the corresponding data set up to the service, you're no longer going to be able to download that as a PBIX. So that's pretty huge. So, if you're accustomed like we are to not necessarily keeping copies of our PBIXs on our network or checking them into some source control, you're always expecting to be able to go out to the service and repull that report, you might get in trouble, right? So know that going in. Just means that now you got to keep a copy of the PBIXs locally so you have a backup. And if you code your own SQL, so when you do your get data, if you're tempted to go in and say advanced and key in your own SQL, that's not going to work because that defeats query folding, and an incremental refresh won't work, and you won't be able to enable it when you right-click on the table and say, I want to do it. Okay, so what does it really look like? I'll show you real quick.
Before
here.
you do your demo, a couple other things people are mentioning. Those are the cautions that you have when you set this up. And I think, Chris Wagner, you might have had a couple other things in mind, cautions, things to know. Did you want to mention any? No? All right. I just wanted to make certain that we covered any other cautions. Those were good cautions. Thanks.
Yeah. And I'm...
No, you hit it. I was just going to say this is an excellent time for you to split out your data set between your report and your data, right? So you have your data that does an incremental refresh, and your reports as a separate PBIX. So
yeah, that's the whole shared data set. So these two things in concert, give you a lot of flexibility and performance improvements. Okay, so quickly, this is just fact internet sales out of the AdventureWorks database. If I go into edit query, there's really no magic here. I connected to a database, in this case SQL TDW, and the AdventureWorks database. I selected a particular table, fact internet sales, and then I filtered the rows. And before I filtered the rows, I set up these two parameters, range start and range end. That's just right up here. They do need to be date and time, and they do need to be, as I said, it's case sensitive, so you got to set them up just like that. So I set them up, then I went and I said, oh yeah, I want to filter my data basically off my order date column, which is out here. And I came in here and I said, yeah, I don't want to key in an amount. I actually want to use a parameter, and I selected range start and range end. Make sure, as the documentation says, one of them is greater than or equal to and one is less than Don't have them both have an equal, or you'll get duplicate records in these partitions, and you'll wonder why your data is bad. And then I just have a step to remove columns. Okay, so that's all you do in Power Query. And then you've done all that. You basically come out and you say, okay, you right-click on the table, say, yeah, I want to do incremental refresh. If you set up your parameters right and such, you're going to be able to toggle this on, and you can say, yeah, I want to do this. This is the full set of data. I want to keep up to a year of data, and there's a lot of options here, right? Gives you a lot of flexibility. And then every night I want to refresh 2 months. And here's a little checkbox. If you have a last modified date, you can select that, and you have to look online. It shows you how that's used and how it's monitored or maintained up in the service. Once you do that, publish it up to the service. Boom. Hopefully publish it up to the service. There we go. It's a pretty small thing. I know I'm a little bit over time.
You're good. We had lots of questions for you, so you're good.
Okay. So now it's up at the service. And of course, as you always have to do, this is connecting not to an Azure database, but to an on-premise database. So I'm going to go quick set up the gateway connection. I've got all that already configured. I just got to select the correct gateway connection. That's all good. Click on apply. Okay, so now at this point, really want to make sure that it's working. And I've got a particular set of trace parameters set up, but I'm connected to my SQL TDW database, filtering to only traffic coming into the AdventureWorks database. If I run this, now remember, I just published this, so this is the first one, so I should see it pull the full data set. And I don't know, did it? Okay, so there it goes. It's starting its thing. Here you can see, basically, it's pulling, just as that slide showed, full year 2019, and then it's picking out and getting all the months up into 2020 through September. So that's the full pull. We've pulled the full data set. I'm going to clear that, go back out to the service, and I'm just going to refresh this. So this is a subsequent refresh. Go back into Profiler, and basically it's done. It pulled all of August and all of September. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And
Nice.
when we set these things up, it's a lot of times I will trace it just to make sure that it's doing as expected. The other thing I would say, on large fact tables, the fact that these queries are being done with where clauses based off the date columns, you might want to work with your DBAs to figure out what the best indexing scheme for that could be, because that could help with your performance as well. Okay, that's it. I'm out. Questions?
Very good. Any questions? Raise your hand or type them or try and unmute real quick. Going once. Going twice. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you so much,
Alrighty.
Eric.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. That was nice. Very, very interesting. Let me see. Now I'll share back and get the deal up here. All right. And you see the do you see the slide for Eric here? Or no?
We do.
All right. So,
Yep.
next speaker is Kelly Rosensky from Nature's Way Products. Kelly wasn't born with that name. And she's going to talk about reporting that was put together for their sales team.
Yes.
Kelly had us at Nature's Way for a meeting. That's where that picture was taken. We had a meeting back in August, and back in the days when we could actually sit in the same room together. So,
I miss your conference room. It's so nice.
yeah, it is.
Yay.
Please welcome.
Our whole building. I haven't been there in a long time.
Oh, right. All right. Please welcome Kelly Brzezinski.
Woo.
Okay, and I'm hoping that you're seeing my screen now. So I'm going to be
Moving on.
sharing about our sales reporting. I'm going to go through the structure and then our row level security setup. Unfortunately, I can't actually share the report because it does have our sales information. And unless someone knows of a really good way in Power BI to scramble data, I haven't figured it out yet. So we don't have it set up with dummy data. So our architecture that we like to use is, this was kind of our proof of concept project, is to create data flows that bring in our dimensional tables, and then we do have a fact table, and then we keep that in a secure workspace that has limited accessibility. And then we create from those data flows a data set, and then that data set is feeding, as you can see, 4 reports, and then we have one dashboard built on top of those reports. And that sales rep workspace is more open than our secure workspace that sources our data flows. So I really want to try what Eric just presented with incremental refresh now on my data flows. I thought I had heard it was only available for data flows in premium, but maybe that has changed. I hope so. So the data flows that we have feeding this report, we have a material dimensional table, and we have a really large couple of tables. So right now I have an inner join on them that pulls in our sales for the last 3 years by material, and then that filters down my material table to only pull in those with sales in the last 3 years. I do the same thing on our customer table, just because those are our 2 large tables. Then I pull in our customer hierarchy, which is a business owned custom hierarchy, the calendar table, and then I bring in the row level security assignment, and I merge that with our Active Directory data, which we don't have it set up where we can connect directly to Active Directory. So that gets pulled through an API, and then really all we need that for is the user's email address. So I'll talk about the row level security stuff in a little bit. And then I bring in our large fact table. This is where I would love incremental refresh. So right now it pulls in 3 years of sales data and it aggregates it by month. But then we also had a request in this report to have the most recent working day pulled in. So we pull in the most recent 7 days. And then we join the fact table to our calendar table by date. But all of the monthly totals, we have land on the first day of the month unless it's the most recent 7 days. So our data model looks like this. We have our fact table, then we have probably what I would focus on is our RLS join over here, which flows the security through to our customer master, which is how we limit our sales team, and then join that to our large fact table, and then we have, you know, our calendar and our material joins and things like that.
I have a question here that might fit right now. Is the
Sure.
Are you leveraging views to get your data sets, or is the report table created and populated on a given frequency?
Well, we connect to HANA, so we connect to HANA views, and we are doing it on a daily refresh schedule.
Great, thanks.
So now I'll jump into our row level security. So our sales reps are limited by our sales orgs, which is the country. We also have a limitation for business unit. And then we have an OR statement. So they're limited to the sales rep code or a certain customer group. So for example, we might have a sales rep, you know, I might be a sales rep, but then I also have access to see the whole book of business for Walmart. And maybe not all of those Walmart customers are assigned to my rep code, but I should be able to see that whole book. So we have a little bit of of difficulty with getting that figured out. But what we landed on is we created an RLS key that we have on our customer table. And then we also have that on our row level security table. And that key just takes those 4 different columns and it merges them together using a pipe delimiter. And it creates a key, and then we join those 2 tables and pass the security. And the RLS table key is coming from their HANA security assignment. So that security actually exists in HANA because we also use direct query. And so we just have a key set up in there that gets pulled in. And then we also had to work through people that have access to everything. So anybody that's in like an administrative role, a finance user, etc. We go through and give them individual records for each combination. So we have those users have a very large number of entries on the RLS table. And then our RLS table also contains the join key. So this is what the join key looks like. And then the user principal name. So one thing that we found in all of this is that the mail address that exists in HANA doesn't necessarily always match their AD name, you know, if we have name changes or things like that. So that's why we pull in the AD user principal name. And it's important to remember this column because we'll be looking at it in a minute. And then another thing I wanted to talk about is we actually at Nature's Way also have key figure security, which is column level security. And right now Power BI doesn't really have a way to handle this. So I've been voting for the idea out on the ideas.powerbi.com because we would love to have this feature. We have, I think, 5 different levels that users can be in. And right now, this report requires a level 2 or higher. So what we've done to work around this is create an inner join to our key figure security and say, basically, you have to be a level 2 or higher or else you just don't get access to any of this report. So that's the way we work around it. We haven't really figured it out for when we have a report that we need level 2 and 3 to see different things. So maybe I'll present on that someday, but so far we've been able to kind of avoid that. So then our row level security is very simple. We just have one role, which is our sales rep, and we go to our RLS table and we say user principal name needs to match their Active Directory email address, and that works for us. A couple of callouts with the row level security, because this was new to us, because haven't done a lot of import. We found that users have to be in the viewer role in the workspace for the RLS to apply. So if they're higher than a viewer, it doesn't apply the RLS. And then the data set has to have the security defined in the Power BI service. And so one thing that we kept running into is we have, you know, like lots and lots of users in this workspace, and we're having to individually add them into the security area of the workspace separately. So we had an Active Directory group created of all Power BI license holders, and then we allow the workspace security to restrict that down to just the users that are in the workspace. The final thing I wanted to call out, just because I found this to be handy, doesn't really have to do with any of the other stuff I've been talking about, but at the end of the report, since this was rolled out to the sales team and it was their first time really using Power BI, we created an FAQ at the end of the report, and this helps users answer their own questions because we were getting a lot of questions on how things were defined. So what does a SKU count mean? And so we put in there what that means. So it's net sales for the last, for a rolling 12 months, and then an example of what that looks like, because that was definitely a frequent question. So I recommend doing an FAQ page at the end of your reports, especially when you're answering the same question over and over.
That's a good suggestion. There was a suggestion that Chris Wagner had related to the column level security. Do you think you could explain it quickly as part of talking with Kelly? Chris?
Sure. One of the things you can do if you want to get column level security when it comes to measures is if instead of having all of your your values in your fact table column wise that you're then adding up, if you pivot it and make them individual rows and do a type, you can do row level security on the different types of measures, thus giving you the ability to share reports widely And, users who have access to measures 1 through 28 can see those values, and users who have those secure measures 29 through 147, that they can see those, right? So you can leverage row level security in order to give you that capabilities.
Great, thanks for the idea. I feel like we've kind of talked about that, but we were concerned that the fact table would get gigantic. But now if we could do incremental refresh on it, then maybe that would keep it from being a beast every morning when it has to refresh.
It was noted in the chat that
Yeah.
the incremental refresh, for data flows, the data flows do need to be in a premium capacity.
That's what I thought I had seen recently, but I was hopeful that maybe they changed it.
Not
Yeah,
yet.
that might change in 45 days.
I'm hopeful.
All right.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I'll talk about it in a second.
All right.
All right. Excellent. Good.
Kelly, thank
Any questions for Kelly? A chance to unmute or type. Raise your hand. Going once. Going twice. All right, we're good.
All right, wonderful. Kelly, thank you so much. This is making this meeting zoom right by, and I want to ask Chris, because I told him that we'd be getting him on board at 10:02 or 3 o'clock, right in there. I still have a short presentation to make. Are you content to wait, or do you got some time crunch here, Chris?
So my fires I've been able to quench down while with the other presenters, so I have a little time. So
Okay, because
go for
mine
it.
will be short. It's one of the features that has been added to Power BI. First, we have to look at this.
Nice.
So hot
Did
right
we
now.
really have to look at that,
Yes.
Steve?
Really.
I love this picture. Okay,
Do you make these memes or do you find
I
them?
find them. I don't have time to mess that around. So what I want to show is how to use the new text CSV by example, and I need to start up my Power BI instance, and we'll get a move on. I think first I will show a different screen. I'm going to show a desktop here, a full desktop, and let's see, I'm going to pick the right one. This thing about having multiple screens, I believe it's this one, except now it's blank. Okay, there's my Power BI, and I've lost my overlapping window thingy here, right there, and I want to go to, God, how do I tell? Screen 2 is that one, I do believe. Okay, so can you see the Power BI desktop sign-on screen here?
We are seeing a slideshow, how to use the new text CSV by example.
All right, then I have to pick a different one. Share screen, and let us try this. All right, I've got a red border around this one. I think that you're...
Power BI desktop.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, first thing I want to show is that we're just going to go to the good old blank screen here. What you have to have in Power BI to take advantage of this new feature, which was added in the August release, you can't just expect it to be there. It's one of those preview features. So if you haven't enabled a preview feature before, in Power BI, you go to your File menu and Options and Settings, and to Options, and then there is a Preview Features option. There it is. And I've already checked it, but this one right here, import text using examples, you're only going to see that if you have either the August or September release of Power BI. All right. So we're going to go into the transform data and get into the Power Query editor. And it's so big, I don't need it to be that big. Oh God. If someone can tell me how to increase the sensitivity zone around a window, I would be very grateful. So many times it's like a single pixel and that's all I've got. All right. Enough moaning and groaning. In the Power Query editor, we drop down the list under New Source and choose Text CSV, and we get, select the text file. So I'm going to take a file called Justices and open that. This is a very topical thing that we're doing here. There it is. This is the file that I'm going to import. Now, the main thing is a lot of your data is not going to be nice, neat columns and rows. Sometimes it's in like the form of a mailing label. In this case, this data comes from the Wikipedia site that lists all of the current Supreme Court justices, and I just grabbed the text underneath each photo and I dropped it into a text file so that each bit of data is on a separate row. So what we do is then click this new button down here. This is the thing that is the preview feature. Extract table using examples. And we get a new window which has drifted over to a different monitor. Here we go. Shows the same data, and we have this blank table area here. So I'm going to create a column for name, and I'm going to select the data here, the name of the first justice, and it does its best to figure out, based on the rest of the data in your text file, is this what you're looking for? No, it's too much stuff, so I'm going to take Clarence and put him in the second row. So now it sees positionally where the name of each justice is. Then I insert a new column, and I'm going to call this the title. And then again, I go for a sample. Here I'm copying and pasting, but you can certainly just type straight into that field. So now here, better success, because it now knows, based on the positional arrangement of the data, each record has 4 rows. The title is just underneath the name. Then I'm going to do a column called Since, and here I'm going to select just a portion of that row, not the word since. And it knows to chop off the word since. And then finally, I'm going to put the age in another column, and boom, it gets all the proper ages. Now I will say that the original data, which was in that that text file, and let's look at that again. The original data was, I just copied this straight out of the website, and there's a comma after each of the names, and I left the comma in. I got rid of the little link at the end of the date of the age rather, but I did used to have commas after each name. That didn't work. It couldn't figure out how to maneuver through this table or through this list of names with that comma after each name. So I went and I eradicated the commas. And then one other thing was my original text file did not have these separators in between the records. So I put those in after each one to help Power BI read that data. The crucial thing about the text by example is that your blocks of data have to be consistent. I mean, everybody knows about data that, like this right here, a phone list. I got this off of a PDF file, and there are these multiple places where data could be put, but the phone list snugs up the rows. It takes out the blanks with addresses. You may have addresses with address line 1, address line 2, and then the city-state zip, but some of them may not have address line 2. I believe that what you need to do is have all of those possible positions accounted for by having blank rows in the data that you're importing. But if you've got nice, neat mailing label type data, that is pretty much all you have to do. Put in a couple examples, it figures out the rest as it goes, and now it's going to give me the data in the table. Oh, I should have showed you the steps that it took, because it develops all of the manipulation steps and puts them where you expect to see them, all of the step-by-step manipulation. And now it's applying it to Power BI, and we've got our table in place here, right here. Well, I see it over here. Oh, it's just taking a little time to get it. There, finally. Okay. So you can go back into the query, and you can see what the steps are, the transformation steps. But it does all of that for you. That is text by example in Power BI as of the August release. All right. Any questions about that?
Type your questions, raise your hand, or unmute. You're getting a lot of very cool, like, this is the coolest feature today. So the chats are saying great stuff.
Well,
so.
here we go.
Let's see here. We've got there are two border. Oh, someone looked up border width thickness for you. You can check the chat later to adjust your border on your windows if you wanted
wonderful.
to have it. So,
all right.
No questions.
Then we're going to go to our main presenter, backed by popular demand, Chris Wagner, who runs a very interesting website called KratosBI.com. He names a new data god of the week every week. Please welcome back to the Green Bay Power BI user group, Chris Wagner.
Well, thank you very much. I can't say that I necessarily name a new data god every week, but I try hard to try and point out some of the good people that are out there doing work inside this space. Today I'm going to be going over, really we're going to be showing 3 topics. I know I promised one. You got 2, because of Ignite from yesterday, you've got 2 bonus topics that we're going to be going over. And I'm not sure. Okay, so I can share my screen. So there we go. So let me know if you guys can see my screen. Are we good?
We are seeing the Myers-Briggs.
There it is.
Excellent. All right. So one of the big things that I've been talking about for a long time, and as part of my MVP, was how do you go about building out a data culture? How do you build that inside of your organization, be it large or small? And one of that's what I spoke about the last time I was here. But one of the big drivers for that is in working inside building out that culture is dealing with the variety of different personality types that you're going to encounter as you start to build that culture out, right? If you're not aware, my name is Chris Wagner, Microsoft MVP for the data platform. I work at Rockwell Automation in their I'm an analytics architect for the company. I'm also the founder of Kratos BI and an OG data god. Oh, is it not going to work this time? Okay, here we go. All right. Come on. It's got nice animations about building out a data culture, and really, as you build a data culture, that's what like starts to really scale and grow inside your company. It ensures that, even if you're on day one on your Power BI journey, there is a roadmap for you as you start to grow and advance. And each one of you on this call is at a different point on that journey. And you're going to have different pieces of this puzzle in place, and others, you may still be working on, right? But the whole point of that data culture is to help you find all these different areas to help you drive data and analytics inside your company, right? And the reason is why, right? And Microsoft, and I think this is really important. If you watch Arun's presentation, or Arun, they address this in 3 levels, right? That individual, right? Ensuring that, or knowing that we want to empower the individuals and recognize that everyone that's inside of our organization has something to contribute. They have some experience, they have some background, they have some knowledge that you don't, right? So anytime you're working with someone else is an opportunity for you to learn and grow from that experience, right? It's also an opportunity to help show and educate the people that you're working with on how they can better interact with the tools and better interact with the data and in the environment that they find themselves in, right? Because straight up, I learned something new today around the whole data from text that I didn't know it worked exactly the way it did. I thought that was really great, be able to see that. And there's just so much going on inside the space. There's no way for any one individual to keep up with everything that's going on. And so you want to always be out there and open to learn from the people as to what they have to show you, but also be open to being that mentor, that teacher, that leader, right? That's really important, right? It's also at each individual team you're going to be working with, there's going to be some dynamics in the team that make it gel, that make it produce, that make it function, or potentially don't make it function, right? That may be causing some problems. Either way, we want to be open to figure out how we can help each team succeed and function inside of their organization, right? And then at the organization level, we really also want to focus in on how is it that we, as an organization, when we come together, how can we leverage the strengths of the people and the teams inside that company to become, to add in that synergy, to become more than the sum of the parts, right? And that's what a data culture is really about, all right? If you're familiar with this, I absolutely, this comes straight out of the Microsoft Adoption Playbook. It's the self-service framework. And I presume you can see my slides, yes? Yeah. Okay, good. The reason I absolutely love this slide is because it really does talk about the different levels and different ways that we look at teams addressing analytics. And while the thing that makes me so excited about being in business intelligence is I think we are definitively the first space that said, you know what, it's not just IT who's going to be going out there and doing analytics. It's not just that high level, that enterprise data warehouse team that's going to be going out and working with the information that we're providing, right? We recognized a long time ago that these things have to be pushed down, not just to the different business units or departments, or but even to projects and individuals, because there's value that can come into play at each space. But the challenge really comes as people start to populate and go into this mess, or into the structure. It can get really convoluted and it can get really mixed up, especially as you have some people that may, that are on different points of the journey, and are at different places in the organization. You may find some that have been spending their entire lives working in the personal reporting layer, but realistically, maybe they would be better suited off in the enterprise space. Conversely, you might find people that work their entire lives inside that enterprise space, who may actually do better because of their breadth of knowledge, moving more into an individual contributor position, right? And that's okay, right? Like each of us has our own personality, and we go through a different evolution when it comes to how we approach information and how we approach these topics. Oh, okay. All right. Now in the Myers-Briggs personality tests, it really goes through 5 different personalities that they start to talk about. And we're going to use the Myers-Briggs personality test as a framework to have a conversation around business intelligence. Now, is this a perfect fit? No, definitively not. This is, Myers-Briggs has been around for like 30, 40 years or something like that. They've been working on it for decades with teams of scientists. And even that's a little wonky, but, it's still really well thought out. The one I'm going to present to you necessarily isn't, but when you look at each of these, individual traits, what it basically does is when you take the test, it kind of breaks you out into the different categories and defines you like inside the mind category as, like an introvert or an extrovert. And it kind of helps you understand how introverts, extroverts relate to each other. Knowing this can be useful in your interpersonal relationships because, you're going to find people like me who don't have a problem going out and talking to large groups, right? And then you're going to find other people like some of the guys I work with who are rock stars, but would rather, pull their teeth out than get on one of these presentation groups, right? Again, okay, just, I get tapped to present for them, and that's fine, right? Like I can be their champion and I can highlight all of the great work that they're doing, and they can help me out on some of the things that, if I struggle on, if I don't understand the complexities of debugging a Databricks, notebook processing, right? They can help me with those things, Energy talks about, people who are observant and intuitive, going into who are the highly practical and pragmatic to the people who are imaginative and creative, right? Nature, gets into, those thinking individuals, who very much live in their head and like to really think through things versus the people who are more feeling based, right? Or tactics, you got the judging and the prospecting, identity, you do the assertive and the turbulent, right? So all of these kind of, and I'm not going to spend a whole big amount of time on this because this is not why we're here. But these are what makes up the Myers-Briggs personality test. Like, how do you break these things out? Here are the 5 analytics traits to the business intelligence self-service framework that I have kind of defined and lined up against these traits. So I've kind of, instead of having the mind and judging all that stuff, I broke these up into Power Query, data modeling, DAX, our UI UX, and our data management, right? So if you think about the life cycle of the data that we work with, they start on the query and sourcing, they go through the modeling, they go through our analytics and the UI in the front end, right? Now, each one has a different personality. You can have those introverted people that are huge on that design, building things out, making sure that they're they're pushing all of their transformations up to the source, and they do very minimal work inside of Power Query because they're much more enterprise minded, or they want to do things on the back end versus inside of the Power Query. And then we've got the extrovert people who are just like all on, let's get this done, let's do this in Power Query, let's make some wild assumptions, let's go out there and let's play with this. These people love working in M. They really love digging into that stuff. I said, let's look at the, data model. We've got the observant people who are big into, designing and building models that have a perfect star schema. They're preparing for that reusability. They're looking at, how can I have many reports that work off of this one model? How can I build these things in a conformed way? So that it's broadly consumable, right? But conversely, you have a number of analysts that are out there who say, you know what, I want my analysis to be highly customized and specific for an individual report that I'm doing. I'm going to be going in, I'm going to be playing, I'm going to be going in, and I'm going to be testing things out. So I want to be a little more free form inside my model, or I just don't know that much about star schemas and I don't care. I got to get some work done, and they're just going to dive right in, right? These are, you're going to find in the IT side, I think that up the chain, you're going to find more of the observant model people than you will the like, hey, get her done stuff. But you'll find these people everywhere that you go, right? On the DAX and data modeling side, you find people who are thinkers, that really want to get in and build out incredible DAX statements. They're big into calculation groups. They've got their time intelligence all built out. They really understand what it means when I say, or when someone says row context and figuring these things out, right? And then you have the other people who are more feeling. And those are people that don't even necessarily know what DAX is, right? They're going to go in, they'll have implicit measures. They're fine creating those, or naked measures as I call them. Again, you're going to be dealing with people on both sides of the spectrum, right? The big DAX heads, and then the people who just frankly just don't care all that much, right? And then when we look at our UX UI or UI UX, you're going to have some people who are just straight up brass tacks, show me the data. I want grids, I want matrices, maybe throw a slicer up there, right? I do not necessarily care about your shiny new, narrative visual that reads off and tells me what's going on. I know what's going on. I want to go in and I want to just get to the data, right? Those are you'll see lots of people that are like that, especially in data communities. That's very, very common. Conversely, you'll have other people that are only about how do I visually represent the data, right? How can I do something to create something that's easy for users to look at, read, understand, and consume? Both people are nice, especially on the UX UI side. It's really important to understand that you may need to create an environment that provides both type situations for people, right? And then when it comes to management, you're going to have the assertive individuals that are out there, and they are Johnny on the spot. They've got 4 Power BI reports out there. They serve the entire enterprise. That's what they manage. They don't manage any more than those 4. That is their thing, right? And they know every little bit about those 4 reports. They're polished off. They are done to the T. And then conversely, you've got those people who are much more interested in building out the next new thing, right? Like the people that are going to build out hundreds of reports, 3 of which are going to be relevant at any given point in time, but they may have all of these up there out and running in the service, right? Again, these are all the different types of people that you're going to end up running into as it comes time to managing and working with people. Now, really, inside the Myers-Briggs space, we talk about like analysts, diplomats, sentinels, and explorers. They kind of group those together. The analysts are broken up into architects, logicians, commanders, and debaters. This is the group that you're going to see lots of inside the Power BI space. When you look at any one of them, you're going to find out that each one of them has, and if you happen to know your Myers-Briggs, as I'm going through this, go ahead, grab screen grabs. I'll also be sending out the slides, so don't worry if I speed through one and you miss your personality type. But each one of them has kind of falls into a different place inside the spectrum, right, of how they work at and how they look at the information that's around them. Each one fits in and can be very useful at the different points inside that pyramid that we talk about when it comes to self-service BI, right? For example, your commanders, these are excellent people that you have at that top of that pyramid. Those people that are great for helping organize and run a large enterprise space. Whereas a debater, you may find lots of those existing inside those high levels, but they may actually do much better in one of those breakout groups or teams or individual contributors. This is the analyst group. The diplomats take on a different role. Diplomats are much more when it comes to telling that story, building those bridges, making sure that these things get brought across, right? Our advocates, these are the people that we're really hoping that we have a lot of when it comes to initially kicking off your Power BI space. They say that having that advocate for your Power BI or your COE is the number one thing that they recommend inside of starting off with Power BI. Getting that up and going is that advocate. Mediators and protagonists are the people are really great to combine and bring them together so that they can start to really help move projects forward, but also soothe any questions or calm that's out there. Whereas those campaigners often are much more suited for inside those individual business units, getting things done, and really your agile fire teams, right? Again, each of these roles work in a variety of different places across the organization, and each one, it's okay, right? Again, your I can't even pronounce that one. Logisticians. There you go. Again, another individual who's an excellent individual contributor, who, if you find them in another place inside the organization, maybe it's a time for them to look at moving on. Same thing with defenders. Well, defenders often do much better at the upper levels inside the organization, that support desk. Same with those executives, either if not in the EDW, in the heads of those business units. And same thing with those counselors. How do they govern? How do they help those people work through things? Personally, this is one of my favorite groups. These are the explorers, the people that are a little more the type A personalities, those people that are out there trying to break new ground. You're going to find that these people are not necessarily your most heavy data walks, but that can really be okay. These people can be, these are going to be the people that come out of the woodworks. They think of things in new ways. They find those new combinations to bring things through, to show these off to the company, and realize that, hey, if I take feature A along with feature B, I can do something, that one thing that your company has been looking for a really long time. So understanding where these people are inside your company and making sure that, if you have them, give them opportunities up and down that pyramid. You can find that they work out exceptionally well in any one of these spaces. All right. Now, these are the kind of type groups that we put together following the Myers-Briggs personality type. I think it's really important for you. Are there questions inside here?
Well, we could ask them in a second, but first,
Okay.
I think, what are you, Chris?
So that's a great question. I have been an ENTP for 35 years, through 30, 40, well, not 30, 40, 3 or 4 different tests I've taken this. I've been the debater, right? That debater. But I just recently took it, and I've now taken it twice, and I've moved to the protagonist. So, you're going to find that, on this journey, you may find yourself fitting into one role or one personality for a segment of time, but then eventually moving on and shifting gears,
Sure. The question that's in the chat is, do you have something to share experiences with more rigid hierarchical organizations where the positions are kind of more in stone and HR is not always up to accepting changes? You want to, and you're working on a data culture?
So yes, in fact, most organizations find themselves inside that place, right? Like, it is, like these are the levels, this is the path, right? They've got, their structure, there's what's it, A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then they've got their M's, and those go through 1 through 7, and then they got their T spaces, like, yes. You're going to find that leaders throughout your organization are going to fit into a lot of these different positions. And you may really find that the leader that you're working with, when you're dealing with their personality and you deal with the way they're working, you may realize that, hey, I started dealing with this mediator type position in a high ranking position inside your organization. Something that's a little uncommon, right? Mediators typically don't work their way up, but they can be really good allies inside of companies, especially if there's a lot of turbulence in that company. Knowing that you can pull on and call on a mediator to help you with those things can be really important for you to realize how you can work and leverage that inside your personal interactions, right? Additionally, it's also important to understand, like, when you run into that virtuoso who is 100% should be an individual contributor, right? Like, virtuoso is your data scientist, your brilliant mathematician who, doesn't really want to seek counsel or work with people. Those people can often find themselves inadvertently working their way into senior levels of management because they're highly intelligent, highly successful, but they may not necessarily have the right personality type for it. Understanding that, recognizing that, and knowing how to deal with that is incredibly helpful in you guiding and governing your career.
Nice, thanks.
Yeah, great questions.
Any other questions? Feel free to type in here.
Yep.
Time is your best friend. As you start to drive change, small wins at a time will drive awareness and enthusiasm. This takes time. This will not happen overnight, and you have to appreciate the small wins. It could start small and trickle through. Good point. Yeah. Thank you.
Totally agree. If you're interested and you've not taken the personality test before, search 16personalities.com. You can take these tests for free. Go ahead, head out there. Taking a test takes about 10-15 minutes, so it's not a terribly long time. They do have a premium service that you can go out and do if you want to get more details on your personality. That can be highly effective. I'd also recommend, if you've not done this before, check out Strength Finder 2.0. If you buy it on Amazon, you get the book. You get a test, an online test that you can take, and you'll get a profile. Will come out of that. For an upcharge, you can get an extended profile. I will note, if you do this, you can, once you start the test, and the test, I think it's like an hour or two, you cannot exit the test and come back. If you exit the test, you'll have to buy the book over again. I know, because I have 2 of them sitting on my shelf someplace. Because I didn't realize how long this test was, but it was highly effective, and I even I really liked this one, and I even spent, I think it was $90 on the updated personality test. That really helped me know more about me. Knowing more about me allowed me to interact better with other people. Knew when, like, hey, these are the types of situations I'm great in. I want to figure out how I can maximize those types of situations, minimizing those others. So that's really incredibly helpful. All right.
Nice. Thanks.
This is my first. I have 2 other pieces that I was kind of rushing to get to.
Sure.
Does anyone have any questions about this before I go to the next pieces?
Going once, going twice. All right.
Okay. All right. Now, this is the stuff that was NDA up until yesterday. So I'm pretty excited about this. Can you guys see my screen here?
I see a thank you with questions. Here we go. Power BI blog.
Yep. Okay. Cool. So Power BI Premium, if you're using it, and I don't know if everyone is using it or not, but it is a wonderful, wonderful resource to help you manage your cloud spend. If you've ever worked inside of Azure or AWS or Google Cloud, it is really hard to understand how and where you're going to be charged a whole bunch of money, and especially in the data world, it's really easy to run up a bill fast. Power BI Premium allows you to manage, basically by chunks of cloud spend inside the premium space, and then share that without having to worry about, radically fluctuating costs. Because if you go like the Azure route, you can really, I saw a team spend $100,000 without realizing it inside of like a 3-week period. You do not want to do that. That's a mistake you definitively want to be on top of. Power BI Premium allows you to not have to be concerned about that. Plus, it gives you a whole bunch of additional features when it comes to sharing, when it comes to those incremental refreshes and data flows, when it comes to pipelines and all that good stuff, right? So there's 2 big things that are coming inside this announcement. Number one, it's that Power BI Premium Gen 2. I've actually, myself and Rockwell Automation, we were the first customers on the Power BI Premium Gen 2 in the pre build. They did a test deployment of it. And initial days, it was a little rough because, literally they never deployed it outside of Microsoft before. But inside of 2 weeks, they had that thing up and running, and it is straight up. I think someone said 16 times faster, but I saw speeds that looked much faster than that in running our workloads on that. Within 2 weeks, we'd cut production workloads onto the Premium Gen 2 workspace, and it was out of this world incredible. One of the things that is coming out with that is auto scaling capabilities, and then some budget that you can set to it. So while Premium allowed you to buy blocks, it's really easy for companies to totally fill up that Premium. God knows we did, and then need more capacity, right? Especially around spike periods. You're able to actually set now a budget and manage how much you spend. And it
For
just
those of us that know
handles it all together.
For those of us that know a little bit about Premium, could you relate it a bit with the P1, P2 SKUs?
Sure. So
dynamic scaling.
Yep. So on each SKU, a P1, P2, P3, I understand they'll have it for the 4s and 5s eventually. But what it basically does is, and they didn't release the official diagram of it. So I almost want to cut back over to my camera. But basically, what the Premium Gen 2 does is, while it gives you that same types of capacity, it basically allows you free reign inside a replicated, split out distributing processing of it, up until you consume. And they've got some metrics and some reports that are going to be rolling out. There is still a cap, but when you set an allowance above it, it'll allow you for during spike periods, like your loads every night at midnight, 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., right? It'll allow you to go over that threshold, and it won't take you from a P1 to a P2. It'll just allow those processes to continue to run and operate where it would normally hit a ceiling for your capacity, right? And right now, you can only set a dollar amount on a per capacity basis. Like you'll be able to say, okay, my budget per month is $1,000 for this premium instance, and $500 for this other premium instance, or $0 for this premium instance. Okay. But when you hit that, it'll allow you to run and operate. They have not set what the dollar thresholds are of what that run time is. My understanding is that I think they want you to upgrade, from a P1 to 2 or whatever, or split it out until you get once you hit like 40% of the time you're over capacity, I think that's when the price would be more beneficial for you to split it out. Great question about how much it is. It's not official, unless I see it on here. It's not official, but my understanding is they're going to keep it at or near the exact same price point. So it's going to be a no-brainer for you to switch as soon as this goes to public preview. Even if you set your wallet and threshold at $0, you're going to see massive benefits of your premium. So
really, you're saying that if we've invested in premium capacity recently, and it's really not using up a P1 SKU, we should be looking at this because it will scale down and we'll pay less if it's not used a lot?
No, unfortunately, and this is my complaint to the Power BI team, is this only gives gas, it gives no break. So you still have your chunk, right? You're still in for $5,000 a month for your P1, or 10 for the P2, and 20 for the P3, right? It'll allow you to spend more, but it won't allow you to spend less. So, like I'm possibly looking at like $500,000 to $1 million.
Something in.
What's that?
Sorry, I was going to say, unless you do something in relation to bullet point 1 there, correct?
Okay, yeah, that's my next topic. So yes,
okay.
So that
okay,
that was my birthday gift this year. I was very excited that finally got announced. So yes, but when we're talking Power BI premium capacities, there's no way to scale down. Like analysis services, you could scale up, scale out, but scale down and scale in to save on costs, right? Like Rockwell could spend like $1 million on analysis services this year. But if we tightly manage our scale up and out stuff, that spend could be 200,000, right? So that could be really significant because of our usage patterns. Premium, you still just buy your capacity, and it's, the nice side is it creates that block that you have. So you're not having to manage all of those different things. Whereas analysis services, you get to scale up, scale down. So still, even if you don't do that, like, okay, here's my allowance, here's my budget that I want to be able to scale up on a capacity issue, you'll still get benefits out of it just doing that upgrade to the Gen 2. I will say the big thing that we're looking for to become available when it goes to public preview is, and maybe it's out and I missed it, but in the private preview that's going on, they've been showing us mock-ups of what reports will look like. So we'll be able to actually show, okay, hey, we went to that excess capacity and dipped into our wallet. Here's all of the reports. Here's all of the workspaces. Here's all the data sets that did that. And here's the dollar amounts that they spent. So if you need to do a clawback, or you need to like push back on teams or on departments for hitting that, you have a mechanism for it. Okay. Personally, that was a big one I was pushing for, because we see this as a major advantage for the teams that are not sophisticated enough to manage analysis services, right? Because there's some that are just don't want to get into that grain of managing AAS, right? And that scaling stuff's too much. Power BI is an excellent way for a division to manage that block of spend, especially with the premium capacity or premium Gen 2. Before I go over to the premium per user model. Does anyone have any other questions about this? So I do want, that's,
We had a question in the chat. How
Yeah.
will it work with a mix of pro versus premium per user in the same tenant? Do you have any ideas? Report
Yes.
users could keep the pro license and developers have the PPU?
yes. So let me cut over and let me pull that guy up. Where'd this announcement go? Ba, 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 ba. All right. So if you guys aren't familiar, I just want to set this up because this is brand new.
I'm still seeing the old stuff. Maybe I'm just like,
Are you? Okay. How about now? Wait for it.
No, I see the new stuff.
okay,
Okay.
just me. There we go.
All right. So, and I'll post these links in the chat. But this is the announcement of the Power BI Premium Per User Licensing, or PPU, as they're branding it. Basically, this step up in licensing will give users all of the functionality of Power BI Premium, but on a license basis. So in case you didn't have that, $5,000 a month for a P1, which can be a lot of money for some organizations and some departments, right? Like, it's not just, large enterprises that run into that challenge, right? If that's too much for you, this is a great option for you to get access to paginated reports, AI capabilities, the pipelines, be able to connect to an XMLA endpoint so you can monitor and watch your incremental refreshes, and you could even go in and trigger an old refresh to run, like manually through, SSDT. Like, holy cow, this is, or not SSDT, SS Management Studio. Like, this is like the king daddy for a lot of teams, a lot of organizations. Chris Finland has been working on this, I think, for 18 months or so, getting this through, getting approval on this. Straight up, I'm excited for this because I shared a slide on LinkedIn. I see this as a massive advantage, even in large companies, to be able to leverage these capabilities in lower environments without having to buy, because if you have a development environment where you're trying to build these things out, or QA, you don't want to put that in your production premium capacity, nor do you necessarily want to spend $5,000 a month for people to like fart around in development. This is going to be an awesome, awesome way for us to give those capabilities to those teams that want to have premium features in lower environments. But for any company, you'll be able to use these capabilities, for users to consume it. Now, Chris Finland does kind of have a good kind of grid down here. It's going to introduce some challenges when it comes to people consuming and working inside this space. So if you designate a workspace as a premium per user workspace, and you'll see this little icon there, anyone who's consuming information off of this workspace is going to need to be that premium per user license. So if you're going to be using these expanded 100 gig data sets and expanded refreshes, that means all of the users that are going to be hitting your stuff are going to need to have that. But it will also mean you can do things like, hey, I want to have data flows that use premium capacity in order to do my incremental refresh, have my data flows run into Workspace, and then I have a non-PPU workspace that hosts my data sets that I could then share out to people who just either have pro licenses, or I could share through, well, I guess sharing through premium wouldn't matter, but you could come in and not necessarily have to have everyone inside your organization have the PPU workspace. Now, people have been asking, what's the price, what's the break-even point on these things? So I would know. And they haven't released the prices yet, but fortunately we have a great tool to do some kind of like the basis of what if analysis when it comes to looking at what the licensing cost would be and what your break-even point would be. So, if we look at like some competitors out there on the market, their price point for a business intelligence platform for to add in these features cost is $100 a month. So if the premium per user was $100 a month, you'd only need 50 users to exceed that P1, 100 for 200. We have another competitor that's out there. I'm not going to name names, but at $80 a month. Again, you can kind of see the different breakouts here. There are competitors at that 30 price point, so you can kind of run through and see at these different levels, where that price point would be inside, and figure out where in the organization, makes the most sense for you. Now, this is something I just put together literally inside this meeting. So Microsoft has not officially condoned or released the prices on any of these things. But I bet you could guess what they might be leaning towards when it comes to their pricing models. I just laid out all of their competitors' price points here to show us where, if they match those competitor price points, where it would be.
I have a question that was in there. You had any Microsoft talked about going sorry, I can't read this. Has Microsoft talked about other license have a lower viewer license now since they have the PPU model? Sorry, Josh, I'm not certain how you were asking that question. Just unmute and ask it.
Yeah, I was going to say, now that Microsoft's kind of come out with the PPU model at the higher capacity stuff, have they made mention of anything from just strictly a viewer license because of some of this workspace that would fit in here as well? Because, I mean, we have users that strictly only do view and don't do development or publishing or workspace access at that $10 license level.
Yeah, so I think their strategy is they would still have the free user, right? The way to give them consume is through premium, either the P SKUs, any of the P SKUs. If you're going to the PPU breakout, the users would end up having to have, these licenses. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're the lowest price point out there.
Yeah.
I know for a fact, especially watching the Power Platform pricing insanity. I know the Power BI team is under pressure to actually increase prices. I'm surprised they haven't.
I just know there's been I don't know, on the user voice page, there's maybe it's a question or a comment or whatever on there about having a specific viewer license itself at a lower cost versus the $10, but that's really the only question.
Yeah, no, I think that's, they go low cost, but everyone has to have a license, right?
Yeah.
So what other questions here? No, this is, I understand it's going to be an additional charge, right? So there's the $10 a month or whatever your EA agreement is, right, to get you the Pro, and then your PPU will be an up charge. So it'd be, $10 more or $20 more or $80 more a month, right? Not that I think it's going to be any of those higher ones, but if you look at their competitors, that's where their that's where their competitors put those price points, right? Plus, when you, go ahead.
Any other questions around this topic? Unmute or raise your hand. We'll try and get them asked here. All right.
Yes, I do have to change my logo. I have an artist working on that right now.
One question was to say, what does it look like? Do you have it available quickly? Since
the logo?
Yeah. I don't think I even noticed that. I was at some of the conferences for Microsoft Ignite, and I didn't realize the logo was changing.
It's right here. The yellow bars. Can you see my screen?
So I'm looking at a PPU break-even point.
Yeah. That is the logo right there.
That's the logo.
Right.
This is the icon right here. This is the icon.
I'm disappointed.
It's on when I was doing my demo with the Microsoft 365, it had all the new logos in there. Power Apps has changed, Power BI has changed, all of those.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Not a good sign when you didn't even recognize that it was on the screen itself. So
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was you were trying to have a visual there that related to the data you were trying to display. Sorry.
so I was trying to have the data I was displaying relate to the new logo. So
Okay.
All
Yeah.
that build up.
yeah.
Oh,
Wah wah wah.
Nice. All right.
All right.
Well, we're going to fold into kind of your Q&A, right? So I think this is a time when we encourage our member community to turn on their webcams and feel free to unmute with their questions about stuff that we've had now that we've got our other professionals on the line and other things that might come up. So please feel free to show yourselves, say hi, and thank Chris for his great presentation.
Hey, I got a question for Chris.
Shoot.
So like we're pro, and we got like 600 users, and we got a
Okay.
ton of stuff. It's just a lot of import stuff. So we're of course evaluating premium, and this announcement of course is real timely. I don't think the PPU is something necessarily for us, but the concerns that I've had is just the size of the P1 SKU and managing, what can go in there. With the number of reports that we have, clearly not everything's going to go in there. But in your experience, as you kind of alluded to earlier, how quickly are you going to gobble up a P1 and be into buying a P2?
So yeah, I cannot believe what the heck do they call it? Gosh dang it. Extracting or exfoliation or whatever it is. They have a name for it, but anytime you've overloaded, so you're going to overload your premium capacity, right? Like everyone overloads their premium capacity. They now have some integrated tools and resources to help you see how much you've overloaded your capacity. Before you were all just blind, what the heck is going on? Now there's some tooling in there. The tooling's about to get better, but you're definitively going to overload it. The platform has some incredible hot swap capabilities to allow more than what should be able to, by any stretch of the imagination, run inside a premium tenant to be able to run inside a premium tenant, right? We have a P1 which is 50 gigs of memory, right? 8 processors. What's that?
25? I thought
Maybe it's 25.
I thought it was only 25,
Oh
which
my
scared the
gosh.
crap out of me.
Yeah.
Because that's
Okay.
nothing, right?
Yeah. Okay. So it could be, oh my gosh. Well, so we have a P1 with 25 gigs of memory, and we have 200 gigs of stuff that's in there running, and people work with it on a regular basis.
Okay.
Do they have some issues? Yeah, it's not always the snappiest, but generally speaking, we were able to, it took getting to the 200 gig price or overload status before people really start to say something and go, hey, we need to figure out how we can expand this capability, right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
could it be at a lower level that you need to expand it? I'm sure. It made me nauseous at 100, but the fact that we got to 200, hey, that works, right?
Okay. Are you doing, when you have 200, then you must have a lot of imported stuff too. So you're not doing all your reports-based stuff, analysis services, cubes, and direct query.
No, we have so we have different tiers at Rockwell. So we have what we call business unit content creators. These are the people that share stuff out to the unit or to the businesses. Those people the majority of them are building out import analysis services, or I'm sorry, import reports. Whereas we have a handful of teams that are currently using analysis services because they have bigger models or broader user groups And frankly, these are almost every single one of them started to use it prior to the ability to break
Power.
out your report. They just needed more control over their data models. So at the time, analysis services was the only option.
Right.
Now we have more teams that have been maturing. So I think we're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 or 30 analytics engineers that will be building on analysis services. The question we're asking and we're starting to evaluate is when do we do analysis services? When do we do premium? What skill level are we requiring for people to go to analysis services versus having a dedicated premium capacity? That answer's actually shaking out that far more are going to be going to the premium capacity than we had necessarily anticipated at the start of this planning. Just because of the number of features that you get in Power BI Premium and the lack of having to manage and control your costs, right? That is that's something that is incredibly difficult to do. And a lot of businesses just frankly straight up aren't prepared for it.
My experiences around this have been that, we got premium capacity mainly to handle the idea that we wanted everyone in the company to view the content. It wasn't about, if we went with per user, we wouldn't be able to reach a bunch of people who are never going to buy reports. So when I look at our premium, we got a P1, we put everything in it. And I set up the metrics app right away to monitor it, to keep an eye on whether it's overloaded or not. It doesn't appear to be overloaded at all. So for us, I see this, Gen 2 announcement, and I'm kind of like, I don't understand what it's going to do for me, because we wanted premium in order to reach everyone. That is
Sure.
90. I mean, we've got 20 people that make reports, and we've got, potentially 2,000 people who can view them.
Yeah,
So,
it's really on performance. It's not on sizing. It's on how fast things will work inside the service, how fast they'll load, number of contingent loads,
Right.
non-failure on that stuff. I honestly, in 2 years, I don't think anyone will be left on Power BI Premium Gen 1. Everyone will have converted over to Gen 2. Just in the same way that we don't even recommend going to like those classic Power BI workspaces, right? Like we turned those off. You can't even create one of those at Rockwell, right? So it's there's almost no disadvantage to the Premium Gen 2. It's all upside.
okay.
At least from everything I've seen from the announcement that they've talked about, this is all just going to be good to go.
Okay. And it was an easy target for us to kind of see, like, okay, well, premium's going to cost us $5,000 a month.
Right.
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 So.
And if you want to do any of the AI ML stuff that's out there, right, you want to dig into that, you want to play with that, you want to do some of the complex data flow stuff, which is going to become a huge component when it comes to, starting your foot down that enterprise cloud data strategy road. Premium's like a no-brainer, right? Like managing a Databricks cluster and the spend that can go along with that is onerous, right? Like you don't want to just jump into that, without being very mindful, right? Data flows and Power BI Premium allows any company to go into that and do it at a relatively reasonable cost and 100% controlled, right? Like your $5,000 a month is never anything other than $5,000, right? Like it's just $5,000, where, like I said, if you're not careful, you could spend $100,000 in Azure without even realizing it. So, like, whoops, I left that cluster on, is a very, very scary thought, right?
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, cool. There's a lot of people in here who aren't turning their webcams on. I have it in this together mode. I put a picture into the chat. And there's some folks out there that could unmute and join us.
I have a recording geek question for Chris. You have
Sure.
a microphone that's like lighted up, and like
Yeah.
that's really geeky.
Yeah. So it's the HyperX microphone. It was on a apparently it's not like, it's very popular, but it's not super good, I guess. But it was like on an Amazon Prime Day special for like, I don't. It was very inexpensive, and I found out normally it's like $200 or something like that. Which I guess after reading reviews, there are much better microphones you should be getting. But
Well, it's nice because you can tell. I mean, you're on the air because the microphone's on.
right, it really helps when my wife walks in the room and like, oh, she just turns right around and walks right out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? People have questions? Welcome our user group community to ask whatever's on their mind.
I would like to say something about asking questions in general. I wrote an essay and I posted it on the Green Bay page, but some of you probably didn't see it. Especially now, when the presenter cannot tell what the reaction is to the material, it's kind of like broadcasting in a bubble. You don't know what's going on. So if you ask a question, it has several benefits, because a whole bunch of other people are saying to themselves at first maybe, oh, I know that, I don't need to hear that question. But then they listen to the answer, and there's an extra aspect to it, there's an extra dimension, a different perspective, and oh, I didn't know that. You ask a question yourself, you ask a question, and the presenter will bless you for asking it. If you sit back and just kind of let it go by, it's it's an opportunity that everybody can learn besides yourself.
Yeah, I did a 3-day training session boot camp thing for our company. I did 2 of these, and it's all on Zoom, and those 3 people that did the webcam thing and were on there, it was just a godsend. Because like otherwise it's like 3 days of sitting here talking in my little room here to myself. It's just.
This was a great turnout.
So
How did
I do have one comment about the Power Platform COE, that toolkit that they just installed. You're right. It doesn't necessarily go in as smooth as could be, but this version that's currently out goes in a heck of a lot smoother than the one that was out in December. Like,
Yeah.
In December, we had 5 people from Microsoft, or we tried to install it. We couldn't do it. And then we had 5 people on the product team at Microsoft try to help us with it, and they couldn't get it installed. I'm like, okay.
Because I looked at
This
it
ain't
back
working.
in February,
Yeah,
January,
yeah.
and I was like, I'm not looking at this. Is a terrible tool. So
Yeah,
it's better.
yeah.
It
Yeah,
worked pretty. It worked pretty well. A little snafus, but I've had a lot worse.
So I always have this little book here. I don't know if you can read it, but
Yeah.
Suck.
Okay, great. Yeah.
A lot of these products start at that suck, move
Yeah.
into that okay phrase. I think this is transitioned to that okay space, because we got it installed in March, and then there was a recent update to it within the last month or two, and we were able to apply the update without having to like call in all the King's horses and all the King's men to get up and running. So
Sure.
we were very happy about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Hey, I got one question I'll ask. So like, what do we think with Power BI, and putting these models out in premium and all that? Are you guys, or is anybody on the call really initiating projects to build new Azure or any analysis services cubes, standalone ones? Are we really thinking that all that's just going to kind of die on the vine and go into the Power BI space?
That's what I've been saying for months now. I'm like, why would I make a tabular or multidimensional cube? Not doing it.
So multi-dimension is definitively out. That is, on its last legs. They keep it up and running for like Coca-Cola.
We're using it.
Yeah. There's some
We
place
have a migrated,
million invested in it, right? Like, so you can't not have it move forward. But they want to kill analysis services. There's no doubt about it, right? They want to get everyone into the Power BI Premium. Again, no doubt inside that space or about it. Really, the capabilities that you get inside of analysis services, the only thing they don't have is the ability to scale down for off peak at this point. And then if you're not going to be scaling up and out and down again on a dynamic basis, there's no reason for analysis services, really.
Yeah, that's kind of like we're doing a D365 conversion and like looking at building out some warehousing for that. And we initially, and this was 2 years ago, right? It's like, well, we'll build an analysis services tabular cube instead of our multidimensional. And, since then we've got all sorts of folks doing Power BI and doing imports, and they're building their queries and their reports. And
so are you using the DES to extract that out? That extract purposes?
Well, I mean, not to get into a ton of detail, but right now this project's been going on a long time, and it's originally D365 like on-prem.
Okay.
So there aren't a lot of people doing that.
Yeah.
So now we're again evaluating whether we'll do the cloud version. And for that, they've said there's a new technology where they're going to start dumping it into Data Lake.
Yep.
And we're going to consume it out of there. So
yeah, look at that Synapse integration, and you're going to be super happy with that. Reach out to Josh Kaplan.
Okay.
He's the owner inside that space. He can tell you about some incredible performance optimization things that they have in there. We're actually looking at engaging and doing the migration over to that Data Lake offering ourselves. So
Okay. Very cool.
yeah.
I just spent the last few days in attending all the different Microsoft Ignite events that I could hit. And we're in the midst of evaluating Synapse, so there's a lot of focus on that when I was looking at it.
Yeah, we were looking at that too. Started some of it. It's more in the suck than the okay. But of course the the individual components have always been there.
Yeah.
Other than the stuff in there that's really exciting, I think, is the on-demand query stuff. That's going to be what I think would be, you spin up basically what is SQL DW. You do all your heavy processing. You load it into Power BI models. You shut it down. And if you have ad hoc things that happen during the day, you service them with one of the on-demand stuff. Is kind of what I think, but
So they have a speed layer they're introducing, which is basically like an auto-generated like premium SQL database that sits between Synapse and Power BI. And as users write queries against Synapse, it'll recognize it, automatically create the table that caches all the stuff in that premium SQL DB, and then behind the scenes redirect all the Power Queries against that, and then just keep that database in sync with what's going on inside of SQL DW. It's pretty hot.
is that like something that is coming out in the next year, you think, or is this just?
Oh my
starting?
God! Actually, I don't know. Maybe I should talk about that.
Well, I'm not trying to pin anyone down. That's the first I've heard.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I said nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the stuff.
They not
that-
announce that? I guess I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe they did.
Yeah.